Hello and welcome to the News 9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News 9 Plus. It's been 75 years since India became a republic, and what an eventful diamond jubilee it has been. India is the world's fifth largest economy today. It's soon to be the world's third largest economy. It's launched spacecraft to the moon and Mars. We run the largest free food program in human history, and we have one of the world's strongest militaries. What's not to celebrate about all of this? But just beyond our borders, an arc of instability seems to be emerging. Countries that were once stable and peaceful are undergoing violent regime change and internal disruption. What are the implications of an unstable neighborhood for India's neighborhood first policy? Joining me to discuss this are Ambassador Veena Sikri, Pathikrit Pine, and Major General Sanjay Meston. Welcome to the News 9 Plus show. Ambassador Sikri, 75 years of the Republic. We're celebrating the 76th Republic of India. Congratulations to all of us. We have proved Churchill wrong, at the very least. His predictions of what India would be like at the time of independence has been disproved, of course. But, I want to start by asking you about our neighborhood first policy. We've come out with a very emphatic neighborhood first policy which says that a peaceful, stable neighborhood is in our interests. But in the last couple of years, we've seen all manner of disruption in and around India's neighborhood, beginning with our friendly neighbor to the west, Pakistan. Why is India not trading with Pakistan? The foreign minister was asked this question very recently. And what does a destabilized Pakistan really mean for India? I'm fully aware of the fact that relations between India and Pakistan are at the lowest they have been in decades. I don't think they've been this low even after the 1971 war. But what's your take on this?
Well, I think, first of all, I think we have to recognize, I think we must congratulate each other on the 75th anniversary of our having our constitution, on becoming a republic. And it's a great occasion. It's a great occasion because there is a lot of positive achievements, of strength gathering, of India's own achievements that we can look back on with pride. And we can see that we are in the process of going ahead equally strongly. So we can look ahead to further achievements, further consolidation of the gains of the last 75 years. In the area of foreign policy that we have started discussing, I think one of the great developments of the last 10 years has been India's neighborhood first foreign policy. I think this is a great success because, first of all, conceptually, we have agreed that our neighborhood is the first ring of our foreign policy and it must remain like that. And we, as the government of India, will do our best to ensure that our neighborhood remains positive, friendly, and with good relations with India. Now, as part of this neighborhood first policy, we have extended every manner of help to our neighborhood. We should give the recent example of Sri Lanka, where they had this huge economic meltdown, almost facing bankruptcy. We gave them almost 4 billion in aid, and I think with that, the people of Sri Lanka realized that India is their true friend, their true neighbor, and faraway China, who was, giving them all this so-called BRI project assistance and then putting them deeper and deeper into debt and taking over Hambantota port and the surrounding areas. This was not going to help them at all in the long run. So I think here is one big success. And I think if you look at Maldives again, yes, Maldives did have a situation when President Muisi got elected that he came up with this great India out policy. But I think it's the people of Maldives and India's own patience and restraint that has brought it all back online. And we've had President Muisi visit India and talk about the importance and the strength of the relationship between India and Maldives and carrying it forward. Now, you talked about Pakistan. Now, it's true, even with India's neighborhood first foreign policy, there can be occasions where we have found it difficult to make a headway simply in the face of unrelenting terrorism. I think this is the one aspect that we have made very clear in our foreign policy and in all other aspects, that India will not support terrorism at all, in any form, in any shape. And our response to terrorism will be a complete cut down of relationships. You spoke about the most favored nation approach. We have always been giving a most favored nation approach to Pakistan. Except that they never gave it to us. And one of the reasons, you will not believe this, one of the reasons that came out of Pakistan was we can't do it because in Urdu it says "Sabse pasandida mulk." And how can India be
Yes,
Sabse pasandida mulk for Pakistan?
that's right.
But even, yeah, so they never gave MFN to India,
Yes,
but we continue to give it. But now with the recent terrorism and the terrible attacks
yes,
on India, we decided to withdraw MFN station as well.
yes,
Oh, yes, you're right that Pakistan, the wall of terrorism that
yes.
Pakistan has created and is repeatedly implementing against India, we have said there can be no talks with terrorism, and it's a complete full
No,
stop. I just
absolutely
hope.
no. Terror and talks can't go hand in hand. General Meston, this has been our line with Pakistan, and we've held that line for almost a decade now. But Pakistan seems to be unyielding in its pursuit of using terrorism as an instrument of state policy. It's one of the few countries in the world that does this. What, in your appreciation, is the reason the Pakistan state continues to use this? Is it because they think that this is, a game of staring India down, and sooner or later we will come to the table, despite them holding on to terrorism as an instrument of state policy?
Very relevant issues, and I think your starting statement today was around India. We have the arc of instability,
Yes.
and ideally, India has developed so much that we would have desired. I think we are the anchor of this region,
Yes.
most stable nation, most prosperous nation, and India would have desired something on the lines of EU,
Right.
Europe Union. That is what we would have desired,
Yes.
and we were heading towards that direction of SARC. And I remember all the governments down the line, including the previous Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. I remember when I was in Afghanistan.
Yes.
His vision was very clear that we need to have a people-to-people contact with Pakistan.
Yes.
And he felt, if everything is good with Pakistan, the region will flourish, Pakistan too will flourish, India will have very good substantial trade directly with Afghanistan through Pakistan. But the whole problem is, you have asked the correct question, what is the problem of Pakistan? The problem of Pakistan is that, a nation which has been conceived on the lines of communalism, that is the start point. The Britishers were successful in dividing India based on communalism, and they got a stooge which was the Muslim League Party headed by Jinnah. That is the start point. So therefore, since a nation which was founded on lines of communalism, they have no history, they have no culture, they are part of us. They were actually part of the undivided India. But suddenly, how this nation was framed is just on the religious sentiments unnecessarily created, and that is what is the biggest problem. And the same sentiments they are trying to create all around us, whether it is Maldives, whether it is even
Yes.
Sri Lanka, they have tried, and now they are trying in Bangladesh. So their strategy is very, very clear. Their strategy is that since we were founded on this theory, so therefore their concept is, to keep striking India and use terrorism as a state policy.
Yes.
India's foreign policy is very clear. Stated policy is neighbors first.
Yes.
And we want to have good relations with every neighbor.
Yes.
Here is a state for which terrorism is the state policy. Now, if that nation has decided to do this, I think Dr. Manmohan Singh also tried. Present Prime Minister
Yes.
Modi ji tried. He went to Pakistan, met Nawaz Sharif, and so many things have happened. And even in his first, term swearing in,
Yes.
when he was to take
He
over
was
the Prime
he was an
Minister, he had
invitee
fought
to
all
the
different
Rashtrapati
papers.
Bhavan. Yes, sir. It's been a decade
Yeah.
now, General Meston, and a Pathikrit, neighborhood first versus terrorism first. These two policies are incompatible. And do you believe that the Pakistan army is at the root of all this trouble? The fact that they control the immediate foreign policy, with the United States, the India policy, all of that. The DGISI, I'm sure, would be one of the foreign ministers of Pakistan, the way he's been jetting around in India's neighborhood. Do you believe things could change under an Imran Khan who's not well disposed to the Pakistan military, or will this just continue, this addiction to terrorism as a tool of state policy?
So Sandeep, my best wishes to everyone on this Republic Day. See, there are two things. Number one, just because we want everyone to be happy, just because we want everyone to prosper equally with us, doesn't necessarily mean everyone else is happy to see India prospering. And that distinction we have to keep in mind. Pakistan's foreign policy, military itself is a tool which has been used by the West for a long time, then by the Chinese. So I don't think that the Pakistanis, what they do is just the Pakistanis doing. There are hands which pull the strings from behind.
Right.
So we have had incredible amount of achievements in the last 75 years. You can spend days talking about it. It's so amazing, so comprehensive. But at the same time, we must introspect in some of the things which probably we should give a little more focus on. Number one, the West always wanted India to be externally. Once they realized that this country will not disintegrate, they started using this statecraft policy that externally stable but internally in chaos, and a troubled neighborhood which will keep on, creating problems for India. Now, two things I want to focus, and I would request if that can be taken forward. Number one, there is a presumption in many of these countries, perhaps including in Bangladesh, we have seen in Maldives also, in Nepal also, that whatever we might do, India will never be against us. India will keep on helping us, even if we are absolutely anti-Indian. That is a presumption that many there have, delusion rather. Somewhere we need to, draw a red line, that these are the red lines you cannot cross. Secondly, unfortunately, while in 1971, India played a decisive role in defeating Pakistan, unfortunately, from 1971 onwards, till probably when 5th of August, the narrative building inside Bangladesh was given away by India. India never tried to control the narrative within Bangladesh.
Right.
What you see happening in Bangladesh is not happening today. From 1971 onwards, the Razakars, funded by Pakistan and others, kept on creating a narrative against India, to the extent that what you saw in 5th of August, many got surprised that how is it people of Bangladesh are so anti-Indian.
Yes.
It's because while we had a great victory in 1971, but we were happy with that only. We were still in that honeymoon period. We never thought what is important henceforth. And that is where I think we must introspect that while I might be nice to others, does not necessarily mean that it will be reciprocated. You need to put terms and conditions to things. And that is what the West has always done.
Right.
Whatever
Absolutely.
the West does.
Pathikrit, point well made. Ambassador Sikri, Bangladesh, our recent neighborhood headache. There's a lot of pressure now to hold elections. I'm sure the political parties in Bangladesh are also very uncomfortable with this new taste of power that the current regime seems to have developed, and the elections keep getting postponed. Beyond pressurizing Bangladesh through the world forums, through our diplomatic level engagements with them, what else can India do to ensure that peace and stability returns to Bangladesh? Because we can't have a country the size of Bangladesh literally go down the tube. It has implications for our northeast as well.
I think that's a very important point, and I think that we have reacted to the events in Bangladesh with great restraint.
Yes.
We have done the correct thing. We have said we are willing to deal with you. We have said that we want a democratic, stable, and prosperous Bangladesh. So I think that what has happened in Bangladesh is an example not of the arc of instability that you have titled your show, but as the arc of instability that other people are trying to create in our neighborhood.
Of course.
There are many people in the world, I think the deep state in the US, the Biden administration, some of them, they show they're uneasy with India's rise. They're uneasy with the fact that India will soon be the third most prosperous nation in the world. They feel that, they trusted China to be great friends as they rose economically, and China, of course, has betrayed all of them.
Yes.
So will India... So we have to live with these kind of efforts from the rest of the world. We have to live with that on the basis of our own self-confidence and on the basis of our own ability to deal with our neighbors and bring them back along the path of democracy, stability, and prosperity. And in Bangladesh, that is exactly what I see as the people of Bangladesh pushing for. What you've said, that there are many political parties in Bangladesh that that they don't like what is happening.
Yes.
They feel that this regime controlled by Mohammed Yunus, ostensibly controlled by Professor Yunus, actually is controlled by the Jamaat-e-Islami, by the
Yes.
radical Islamist people, and the people of Bangladesh don't like it. So I think that our building up a friendship of all these years, instilling in our neighborhood the desire for democracy and stability and prosperity. This is important. I think the people of Bangladesh are rising and saying that it was better earlier. We
Yes.
want democracy, we want elections. And I think this, coming from the people of Bangladesh, this gives us a great strength to support this. That the people of Bangladesh wanted, we must have early elections and return to democracy. This business of wanting constitutional reforms and a reform
Yes.
committee here and economic reform committee there, police reform committee, third one. This cannot be done by an unelected government.
Absolutely.
You can't have people coming and taking power and saying this is what the nation wants. This is
Yes.
not what the nation wants.
Yes,
The nation
and-
wants, and the elected government will decide.
Nation
And I'm
wants
sure-
elections, indeed, Ambassador Sikri. But General Meston, as Ambassador Sikri pointed out, that India has been incredibly patient with Bangladesh, despite all manner of provocations. But this thing of a government that doesn't seem to have any legitimacy, taking power and then continuing to carry out these kind of reforms, saying that, look, the time is not right for elections, postponing the return of an elected government. That imposes a lot of pressure on our ties with Bangladesh, because you're looking at a kind of a quasi-emergency, if you can call it that, in Bangladesh, where a government which doesn't seem to have any legitimacy has taken power and is now continuing to reshape the political landscape. Is there a point beyond which you think India's patience will snap and some kind of hard measures will follow?
See, firstly, we should be very clear. If we keep talking about ISI and deep state, yes, their aim and strategy is very clear. But what are we doing? That is the whole question. We have enemies all around us, but how should we be prepared? And therefore, the question is that if we have to be prepared, firstly, yes, there are certain aspects which have to be considered. One is diplomacy, at which we are extremely good.
Yes.
I myself have been in the foreign division of the Indian Army, and as a defense attaché, I have interacted with large number of ambassadors. Let me tell you, our the diplomacy is extremely good, and we are engaging extremely well to do everything in the interest of our country. Next is, I think here we have to be little proactive, is defense diplomacy. See, one thing is very, very clear today. Even our foreign minister recently has stated the importance of defense diplomacy. Now, this is where we go slow. We have so many officers doing so many courses, including National Defense College at Bangladesh.
Yes.
So we should have defense diplomacy in terms of the Army Chief, the DG Military Intelligence, the DG Defense Intelligence Agencies, carrying with forward these delegations. And Bangladesh is not only Mohammed Yunus.
Yes.
Bangladesh is a society, there are people, there are various factions, there are various parties. So let us contact with everyone. Ambassador Sikri will also bear us out the defense attaches posted in various missions.
Yes.
And the ambassador, we have such a fine tuning. We understand all these facets, and therefore we have fantastic contacts at appropriate levels. Even, let me tell you, as defense attaches, we have contacts with politicians. I had gone with the Indian Army Chief as part of a delegation to Bangladesh in 2007. We met their president, we met their prime minister, we met their defense minister, besides, of course, the entire army setup. And we carry messages from the government of India. So this tool has to be adopted. Somehow we are very, very slow in this aspect. We have to utilize. And let me tell you, DGMI Pakistan, this DGISI, he had just gone. Who's DGISI? Indian Army, the three services and the delegation, they must go. So this is one of the proactive things. Next is, since we have, unstable neighbors, especially now Bangladesh, whatever it is happening, I think we as a nation need to have a strategic culture, a strategic concept. Everyone should start thinking about strategy. If you see our day-to-day politics, what do we keep hearing? Strategic culture has to be developed in this nation. And
Yes.
therefore, first and foremost is how to engage these nations. Number two is, if these people have decided to target India, we need to strengthen our borders. How is it that so many illegal Bangladeshi migrants are
Yes.
pouring into India every day? There are people who are getting Aadhaar cards. How are they pouring in? We need to have a proper grand strategy as to no infiltration of any kind should be
Absolutely.
acceptable. How
Yes.
that lady from Pakistan through Nepal entered in broad daylight when SSB is guarding that border, Seema Suraksha Bal. So this is unacceptable. We have to have a proper strategy and people should be held accountable.
Yes,
These
absolutely.
infiltrators,
Soft power to be backed by hard power, General Mester, as you mentioned. But now, I want to talk about our neighbor to the north, the second largest land boundary with China, India shares. Ambassador Sikri, the Trump effect is now in full play globally. It's literally an order, an hour, if you can call it that. He has completely disrupted global politics, in a way that only Trump can. Do you think that the rise of Trump will make a Modi Xi Jinping summit more likely this year? The fact that China seems to be rattled by the rise of Trump and the kind of statements that he's making, will an assertive Trump force China to sue for peace along the borders and ask for quiet borders with India, because they've just withdrawn from there? How can we build on what we have achieved so far by standing our ground in Ladakh with the Chinese?
Well, I think that you're right to some extent that, last year, just after the election results in the US and President
Yes.
Trump's return became inevitable, you did see, by a coincidence, I think, of some kind, that yes, there were talks between India and China, and the Depsang and Demchok issues were resolved, and the patrolling could resume, and so on. And now our foreign secretary is about to visit China.
Yes.
And for having talked to them. Now, this is in keeping with what India has maintained as part of its neighborhood first foreign policy, that we will talk to our neighbors. We are prepared to talk to our neighbors.
Yes.
We are prepared to have good relations. But having said that, it is equally clear that we're not going to forget the breaches of this good relationship, this neighborhood relationship, that were done at the Chinese behest in 2020, and how they themselves threw these agreements out of the window, thinking they had the upper hand and they would be able to do some more salami slicing with equal impunity,
Yes.
as they had been doing for decades past. Now, I think this is where India's own strength, India's own collective wisdom, and India's assertion of its military robustness came
Yes.
to our rescue, and we saw that India was able to hold its own, which came as a big shock to China. So this is something that we are continuing to build upon. This is very important because China only respects you if you are strong.
Yes.
Any sign of weakness, China comes and sits on your head and is like the big bully of the
Yes.
neighborhood. So I think we are continuing with this policy of trying to have a normal relationship in mutual interest and
Yes.
mutual benefit. But if there's any point of breach, it's not that we're going to trust China again. You can always have that old maxim which was said to be put by Joseph Stalin about trust but verify.
Yes.
So I think unbridled trust is no longer going to be there with
Right.
China. And I think we have to also recognize a very important factor, China's own internal
Yes.
situation, which is weakening. Their own economic situation is weakening.
Yes.
In the face of sanctions from Western countries, in the face of their declining exports,
Yes.
and the face of growing dissatisfaction among the young people of China, I think Xi Jinping himself is looking for the Indian market as places where his exports can come to.
Right.
And they too think that there are a lot of goods that they can send to India in a big way. There's a great deal of self-interest in this, but
Yes.
from the side of China, and this we have to recognize. But nonetheless, we are prepared to go to walk the talk up to a point and build
Yes.
these good relations. But I think it's not going to be at the cost of India's relationship with USA. Rather, I think an even-keeled relationship between India and China will help India's position in Quad very much, will help
Yes.
discuss discussions of maritime security and will help India build its relationship with the West, with USA, with President Trump administration and others, and talk on this from a position of strength. I think President Trump has shown his confidence in India. You
Yes.
saw that our external affairs minister was there at the inauguration.
Absolutely.
The way he was given this pole position among the audience, the very first seat
Yes.
with our external affairs minister, showing in every way that they want to build a relationship with India. There's every likelihood of a meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, maybe in the month of February,
Yes.
and also the Quad Summit in India sometime this
Absolutely.
year.
The Quad
So I
Summit
think
with
that-
China is, basically on guard with, given the language of the joint statement that was released by the Quad foreign ministers, a very significant meeting and a very significant statement there. Pathikrit, very quickly, we're out of time, but just give us a sense of this year, the Quad, you have a very significant meeting with the foreign ministers, you have President Trump coming to New Delhi for a Quad summit, it looks like. Will China be on guard with all of this? Can we expect a better behaved Xi Jinping 2025, at least in Donald Trump's presidency?
Well, Sandeep, two things. Of course, our militarily we have to have these, collaborations and these dispensations like Quad. But Quad is not just about defense; it is about development of resilient supply chain,
Yes.
which is a very critical part. India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. I think it's a culmination of Quad. You want to create dehyphenate from China to a certain extent, and China will try to improve its relationship with India. Ambassador ma'am mentioned about China looking for India as a ground for market.
Yes.
But we have to be very careful about one thing. China will try to dump their products in India. They're using the FTA route. They're using those countries with
Yes.
which India has a free trade agreement to route their products to India. Yes, so I think in certain ways there are areas of convergence between India and China. To that extent, we have understood one thing: India has the capacity to reach out to Shanghai and Shenzhen if the need be. So they will be behaved for some time. That's the reason the thaw happened, because it's like living another day to fight the war. But
Yes.
invariably, we cannot lower our guard, and at the same
Yes.
time, we have to be very careful about what Trump would ask us for.
Yes.
Trump would sell all kinds of weapon systems, some of them which we can easily manufacture in India. So it has
Right.
to be a calibrated approach from Indian
It
side
has
as
to be a
well.
calibrated approach indeed. Thank you very much, Pathikrit, Ambassador Sikri for joining us, and General Sanjay Meston. India may be close to signing a deal with a consortium of an Indian and German shipyard to build 6 Project 75I submarines. Now, this project has been in the pipeline for nearly 2 decades. Joining me to discuss what this means for our indigenous submarine capabilities is Vice Admiral K.N. Sushil. Admiral Sushil, welcome to the News 9 Plus show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Admiral Sushil, explain for us the significance of the down select of the Mazagon Docks Limited and TKMS consortium to produce the Project 75I submarines. How important is this, given the fact that this project has been in the pipeline for more than 2 decades now?
Yeah, it is undoubtedly a very important project. We've been talking about this in various forums, and various ideas were floated up of how to go about Project 75 India and the continuation of Project 75 itself, or
Yes.
trying to realize the 30-year submarine building program.
Yes.
So now, if we have got down to shortlisting between Mazagon Docks and TKMS,
Yes.
then it is a continuum of what happened in the SSK program.
Right.
There is a good understanding of our work culture, a good understanding of how the Germans would react, and I think it is, though a belated step, it's a good step forward.
Belated, but a good step forward. But, Admiral Sushil, I have to ask you that this seems to be the third such attempt to buy conventional submarine technology in 4 decades. We first began with the German submarines, of which you were one of the commissioning commanding officers in the 80s. Then you went to the French for conventional submarines, and now we are back to Germany again. Why is it that we seem to be unable to stay the course on designing our own indigenous conventional submarines, what you would call a indigenously designed, developed and manufactured submarine, for which you don't need to go to any foreign country?
I think one of the most important issues which we learned from what happened in the past is that a large amount of problems in the decision-making process lies with the bureaucracy. Now,
Is this the
we
civilian
know that
bureaucracy or the military bureaucracy or both?
essentially the civilian bureaucracy, but the military bureaucracy in terms of choices, etc. But the military bureaucracy, the civilian bureaucracy in terms of how to go about or the way ahead. You know, they are very reluctant to take a step. The STW scam, as you know, took place long back.
Yes.
And we nearly threw the baby out with the bathwater. And after that, STW became a bad word.
Right.
You know, then we went to the French, told them, you know, we have a license to produce 2 more. Please get, you know, HTW to allow you to, you know, help us with that program, which HTW said, okay, go ahead, but give us so much money, and that program was stopped. The question we need to ask is, why is it that we are not able to design?
Right.
Why is it that we are not able to go ahead? It's not that you can go to France or Germany or, you know, Russia. That's an easy choice. But
Yes.
where is the answer to why we have not learned from the HTW program? We have not learned from the Scorpion program, and we are now trying to learn something more from another, you know, collaboration. That is the crux of the issue.
Right. So when you say a design, Admiral Sushil, you mean a clean sheet design where you convert a design into, you know, a submarine, a fully functional submarine. That is what we are talking about, without taking help from any other country, based on our own capabilities.
Yes, by this time, and with so much of background experience which we have had in terms of various philosophies which were put in front of us, and we also try to, you know, do them. The SSK, the STW, the Scorpion, the Arihan class, and so on and so forth. All these have given us such tremendous exposure to design, but yet, you know, we can't put pen to paper and say, okay, this is what we are going to do. That beats, I mean, that confuses me quite a bit.
It's mind-boggling indeed. But, you know, Admiral Sushil, I'm told that about a year ago, the DRDO has now begun a project to design an indigenously designed and developed diesel-electric submarine. It's called Project 76. We're hearing that you could have a design in the next 3 or 4 years, a completely homegrown design. And I believe the ATV project team is also working on this. Would you back this project? To what extent would you place your bets on this IDDM project, say, succeeding where others have failed?
Yeah, I hope and sincerely hope that this program will see the light of the day. I hope it is not some technology demonstrator pieces like which DRDO is often used to, because here is a question of life and death, and you know, a capability which we need to build, forsaking other choices which we will have to make, which means that the realization of a submarine force level will get delayed so much, because once we take this route and the bureaucracy is convinced that okay, everything is well, then every other door is shut. So we need to be very, very sure that what DRDO is saying, they will be able to walk the talk, they will be able to deliver. I hope, and with all this experience, there is no reason to disbelieve what they are going to say. But I have not seen or not associated with any of the steps taken so far. What are the processes in place, etc. So I will not be able to really give, you know, judge comment on this.
Right, absolutely. Conundrum there. Thank you very much for speaking to us, Admiral Sushil. Always a delight to hear from you on India's submarine worries. Watch the story on the P-75I submarine deal, India's monster submarine deal. Will it make us Atmanirbhar under the sea? Do watch. In December 2023, the Indian Navy will commission the INS Vaghshir, the 6th and the last of the Kalvari-class submarines. This will be the culmination of the P-75 program. It's a milestone that highlights not just India's growing maritime power, but also a glaring chink in India's armour. Now, India is the only major power to not have designed and built its own submarines.
both the Chinese and the Pakistanis are building up their submarine capabilities.
The way the PLA Navy is trying to exert its, kind of a supremacy in the IOR.
Our submarine capabilities started declining a little bit as we went on. Some of the submarines had just gotten too old to be, continue to be effective.
So which means that we need to have more assets, or in fact minimum assets which need to be there to be acting as a deterrent, and also which protects and safeguards my interest in my areas of operation.
All this is set to change with a new defense acquisition, Project 75 India, or the P75I program. P75I can potentially transform Indian maritime presence. But is it the answer to India's underwater security needs? Can it kickstart India's submarine building industry? Can this monster submarine deal make India Atmanirbhar under the sea? Everything will be revealed, President Donald Trump said as he signed the executive orders ordering the release of the John F. Kennedy files, the Robert Kennedy files, and the Martin Luther King assassination files. Now, these three sensational assassinations in the United States, all in a 5-year span between 1963 and 1968, altered the course of American history and politics. And more importantly, it caused lingering suspicion about who actually killed these iconic politicians. Most Americans, for instance, still refuse to believe that JFK was killed by a single assassin. But why has the world's oldest democracy been sitting on these files for more than half a century? And what can we expect now from these files? Joining me to discuss this are Ambassador Deepak Vora and Iqbal Malhotra. Welcome to the News 9 Plus show. Ambassador Vora, 60 years nearly since John F. Kennedy's assassination, and there are still lingering questions about his assassination. Most Americans don't believe that there was a lone gunman. They believe there was a huge conspiracy of malevolent forces that got together and killed John F. Kennedy. Decode for us the significance of this move. Trump, in his first presidency, said there was you couldn't declassify the files because it was very sensitive. But in his second term, he seems to have gone ahead and said, let's do it. Let's open the files to the public.
Now, you asked a very interesting question that what has changed between Trump 1 and Trump 2.
Yes.
Very quickly, by way of background, a friend of mine in Columbia University has told me that the US government spends between 18 and 20 billion, B-I-L-L-I-O-N, 9 zeros, US dollars every year to keep it secrets, and 3,000 federal government employees. What will be confidential, secret, top secret, what will not.
Yes.
And 0.5% of that budget is spent on declassifying documents. So you can understand that it's a country that is obsessed with secrecy. Very good wartime. But in this particular case, John F. Kennedy in the early 60s, I recall, I was a kid, you were not even born, when he was assassinated. I remember that even then there was talk that they are not telling the truth. There was a chap called Jack Ruby, then he got shot. Similarly with Robert F. Kennedy, there were a lot of questions. And then Martin Luther King, sir, I have no hesitation today in telling you that his widow, Coretta Scott King, I knew her well. We were walking in Atlanta, I'm talking about the early 80s, and I said, Your Excellency, I called her Your Excellency for some reason. I said, Your Excellency, do you believe that what happened to your revered husband was what is being made out to be? She said, not at all, and I don't intend to talk about it further. So that obviously she too didn't believe the kind of nonsense that was being fed to her by the American federal agency. Now, what is, I believe, that that 3 attempts were made, alleged attempts, actually attempts were made on Donald Trump's life during the election campaign. Obviously, the Secret Service didn't do its best to protect him. Plus, what he calls the deep state, which I prefer to call the dark state, because it goes all the way up to the president, up to the top. The dark state blocked every attempt that he made or that when he was trying to become president of the United States, they played all kinds of dirty games with him, releasing this document selectively. That he doesn't like them at all.
Yes.
So he wants to dismantle them. He wants to let the American people know that, look, you're being had. I was had by these guys, and I now intend to extract their teeth so they can't bite anymore. There are thousands of these secrets lying in files. Trump's idea is, you guys hurt me, now I'm going to teach you a lesson, and I have the power to.
That's a fascinating analysis, Ambassador Deepak Vora. The fact that Trump is actually going after the deep state, and from what we are reading now, it seems that the CIA is the one that could actually be discredited by the revelation of all these documents, because the last bunch of files is believed to deal with the CIA. But I want to go over to Iqbal Malhotra. Iqbal, you're a filmmaker, and it's very interesting that the JFK assassination theories were revived by the Oliver Stone movie, JFK in 1991, where the US actually started bringing together all these files of the JFK assassination and then brought in that classification policy and said that by 2017 they have to be declassified. What explains this change of mind that Trump has had, as Ambassador Vora is saying, that he's actually going back at the deep state, getting back for all those assassination attempts that he seems to have survived, and which a large number of Trump acolytes believe was the work of the deep state. What are your thoughts, Iqbal?
I disagree with this point of view, because Trump has extended an olive branch to President Putin yesterday or day before.
Right.
And he has adopted, in fact, a carrot and stick approach. He said that if you end the Ukraine war, then I will help you in becoming a great economy once again, because he believes that the Russian economy is under extreme economic pressure.
Yes.
In fact, US has just sanctioned 143 very large crude carriers which were carrying Russian oil to China and India, and they have debarred those ships from seeking anchorage in any port or getting insurance cover.
Right.
So what Trump really wants to do is that he wants to push Putin into a corner. Now, the issue about the JFK assassination is that even though the Warren Commission of Inquiry came to the conclusion that Oswald, the assassin, acted on his own, but three questions remain.
Right.
Did Oswald act on his own? Did Oswald act on behalf of the KGB?
Yes.
Or did Oswald act on behalf of organized crime?
Right.
Now, you know that 2 years before John F. Kennedy's assassination, there was the famous Bay of Pigs fiasco.
Yes.
And then a year before that, in 1962, before the assassination, there was the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes.
Which caused President Khrushchev a lot of humiliation. Now the thing is that I don't remember if he was president or he was General Secretary of the Communist Party, but I think he was probably General Secretary of the Communist Party at that time. But the thing is that Oswald had, in fact, emigrated to the Soviet Union in 1959.
He had defected and then he came back.
He spent 3 years there.
Yes.
And 2 months before Kennedy's assassination, he had gone to Mexico, and from there he went to the Cuban embassy.
Right.
And he tried to get a visa to go to Cuba, and he told the Cuban embassy that he wanted a transit visa because he wanted to go back to the Soviet Union.
Right.
So the question was that, was he planted by the Russians, and did they want Kennedy killed because Kennedy had humiliated them in 1962?
Right.
So I think Trump is trying to rake up these issues in the public domain because he's trying to build up a constituency of collateral pressure against Putin, because he wants to end the Ukraine war.
Right, a constituency of collateral pressure to bring pressure on Putin to end the Russian war. That's a fascinating take there. But, Ambassador Vora, the fact is that it's all smoke and mirrors. You have all these conspiracy theories coming out, the JFK files being declassified. And of course, you have President Putin, who's ex-KGB himself. And the KGB has played some of the greatest spy games in all of human history, perhaps, the kind of spy capers that they've pulled off. But, give us a sense of where we're headed with American politics, with all of these declassifications coming out. Do you think that they will kind of intensify this war that America is currently seeing between the Democrats and the Republicans. It's a very nasty kind of political divide that we're seeing in the United States currently. Give us a sense of how these files will kind of add to that fire that's raging on in the US right now.
It's a society that is hopelessly divided at the moment. There's a cleavage down the middle. There's no doubt about that. And somebody even said, I think it was Kishore Mehbubani, formerly of Singapore, who presently Dean of the Singapore University, formerly Ambassador, Foreign Secretary, who said that a country that cannot find an alternative to Joe Biden and Donald Trump is obviously disturbed. It's a very disturbed society.
Yes.
So let me add to this that you remember there used to be a fellow called Barack Hussein Obama who had promised to shut down Guantanamo within 8 days. 8 years later, he couldn't do anything with the deep state, torpedoed every effort that he made. Now, what I have been told by my friend who has researched this subject, some of the information is not even released to the president. If that is true, Donald Trump may not even know what is in those files himself. He couldn't have read them and said, okay, guys, I'm ordering them to be released. He'd probably be as surprised as anybody else. What will happen is, it'll probably strengthen his reputation. And the Americans want to know, like anybody wants to know. Will they find out? I doubt very much, sir. If the documents are released, they will be heavily redacted. As we used to joke in the Indian bureaucracy, don't even leave a piece of toilet paper flying around. Somebody will pounce on it and open a file. So there was a joke at that time when I joined the service, or they'll even classify it. Here I believe that he's trying. I don't think he'll succeed. It's much too ingrained, the dark state. It's not going to enable him to function as he would like to function.
Absolutely. Interesting that a dark state as opposed to a deep state that Trump seems to be up against. But Iqbal Malhotra, it's been a decade since we declassified the Netaji files. We didn't find a lot in those files. Do you think the Indian government needs to start declassifying some serious material that we would need answers for? What's your estimation of this? What secrets are there, apart from the Henderson Brooks report, that we need some serious answers to?
Well, you mean about the Netaji files?
Yes.
Actually, the fact of the matter is this, that I made 3 films on Netaji, one for Discovery Channel, one for the History Channel, and one is running on Amazon in the US. Now, it's an established fact that there was no plane crash in Taipei. And it's an established fact that the Germans had a submarine base in Penang, and one of their submarines was caught on camera off the coast of Russia on the 30th of August 1945, and it was shot down. It shot down the aircraft that was doing the reconnaissance of that area, the American aircraft. So, and all the files about that event have been are still classified. So, I mean, there's no doubt that if Netaji had really died in the plane crash, there would be evidence about it. There is no evidence about his death, and because there was no plane crash in Taipei on that day, and the Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry ascertained that fact. So the point is that if you have a will, you can get things. There is evidence lying in Vietnam, there's evidence lying in Japan, there's evidence lying in France, there's evidence lying in the UK and the US. It's not only in the Soviet Union, the erstwhile Soviet Union. So, I mean, when no Indian political party has been really interested in getting to the bottom of the truth, then what is there left to say? Because these questions will remain for the next 100 years, unless and until you set up a team, you go to all these in good faith to all these 6 countries, and you have a budget, and you go through their files, and you come up with the answers.
Absolutely.
And as Mr. Vora said, it's possible some of the files are redacted. But like there are always shadow files. Now, if you can get the government to open up their shadow files, then you'll know. I mean, you know that this gentleman, this Malayali gentleman who was number 2 to the Bose organization, Netaji's organization in Europe, Mr. Nambiar, he was brought back by RAW on the instructions of Mrs. Gandhi, I think in 1983 or 84. And why was he brought back from exile in Switzerland? He was living there, he had a companion, and he was in his mid-80s. What was the reason to bring him back? And even if those files are declassified of 1984 and Mr. Nambiar's, and Nambiar was a Soviet agent, he was an agent for many intelligence organizations, including the West Germans. So you'll find answers there, but nobody is interested, and everybody is throwing red herrings in the
Nobody's
path of,
interested. Yes,
people
yes,
waiting
Iqbal.
for
I'm
the
afraid we're
vote to
completely
still
out
come
of time, Iqbal. But thanks for joining us while we're talking about the major move in the United States, that is the declassification of the John F. Kennedy, the Robert Kennedy, and of course the Martin Luther King files. Thank you very much for joining us, Ambassador Deepak Vora, Iqbal Malhotra.
Thank you very much.